Hey, David.
Hey, Scott.
How are you?
Right, and you.
Good, thanks, man. Good to connect.
Yes. Hey, my camera's a bit damaged on my laptop, so
Oh, okay.
you,
You want to just
you won't be
do?
able to see me. But I want no, no, no. It's great that I can see you.
Yeah, yeah. No, exactly, exactly.
How'd everything go at the hospital?
It went well. It went well. They just kept us for like 10 hours, and then we're like, oh, we don't know why it's, but you're fine. The baby's healthy. Everything's good. So they don't really know why, honestly. So,
Really, but
but they definitely tried to pump vaccines and shit, and we're like, okay, no, thank you.
yeah, no thanks, no thanks.
So,
Yeah,
tell me about this guy you got going on.
yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if you had a look at the Phoenix complex.
I have
If
not
you
had
had,
a chance yet. So tell me a little bit
but
about it.
yeah, it's. I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but he's obviously he's fed into this whole game. But effectively, he's the guy that the final diagnosis was bipolar, um, and the way he came into my office into being with me was initially for different reasons, but it turns out the practice I work at, the one general practitioner, the GP, committed suicide. A
Okay.
gay guy, and he committed suicide, and this guy, my patient, and this GP had become very good friends. And basically, his whole drive is he's at this stage he's probably dysthymic. I wouldn't say he's depressed. He refuses medication. He's been to many mental institutions before. Um, he was a user of what we call here cat.
Okay.
It's methadone or
Meth here, yeah.
yeah, methadone. It's similar to bath salts, that kind of thing.
Ooh. Yeah, that's
Um,
bad stuff.
yeah, yeah, it's similar to that. So he was a user of that for a year and a half, and that was up until about 8 months ago. So he's got that impulse control issue. He's got that compulsive drive as well to use. And basically, whenever he gets into a state of dis-ease or of feeling uncomfortable, he goes into this dream world. And he goes into this world of, he describes the paranormal, and he has guides, and he has a lot of, it's like there's a mystical realm, and a whole conversation takes place. And we would see it as daydreaming, but it's his way of coping.
Right.
And that's when I came across this fantasy-prone personality, which is not an official diagnosis, but which seemed to fit him quite well. But then, on further reflection and more digging deeper with him, because I initially encouraged him to stay out of that world and to live more in reality. But now it seems, I mean, my supervisor couldn't really even give me much help on this. Um, but he does seem to have some psychic ability, and I don't know what your feelings are on psychic abilities and things of that nature are. He does seem to have some psychic ability. It's actually the opposite isn't encouraged. It's encouraged that they they get in touch with their feelings, and they get in touch with this ability of being able to read people, but they are prone to depression,
Yes.
and that's one of the reasons why he is depressed, is because wherever he goes, whatever he sees, whatever he does, he's picking up on people's energies. The bottom line is the SMS I got from him a couple of weeks ago was effectively saying, he mentions the phoenix rising, and that's when I looked into that. And he can't end his life at the moment,
Okay.
because he's depressed and he is suicidal. He needs to come out of this, and he needs to cope with this first. And once this has been resolved, then he can complete his life cycle.
Okay.
Taking it to the next world. So it's a very challenging case. It's a very different case. So what are your thoughts on it?
So here's my initial thoughts on it. One was some of them we talked about already. Definitely he's in that child ego where he's using numbing or checking out to kind of handle reality versus handling reality. Quite honestly, if anyone isn't a little bit depressed with the state of the world the way that it is, I would be more concerned about them because they're fucking idiots.
Sure.
So, someone like this is very intuitive, very in touch, very in tune, and they're seeing stuff that's not right. That's their unconscious total absorption. So their conscious mind is going to begin to regulate these messages and fit them into a framework that feels good for them. Whether that's just completely distorting it, like, no, this isn't so bad, the politicians really love us, everyone's out to heal us, and everyone's happy, or this other style, which is him is going into this metaphysical realm where it's telling him how to regulate all this information. I want to kill myself, but it's not quite right, the right time. So he's got conflicting messages and this cognitive dissonance going on. But this coping mechanism that he has, this alternative reality, whether it's real reality or an alternate reality, I do personally believe that there are multiple realities that we're dealing with, and that you can activate those by going through meditation. These are this gleaning information, if you will. We've all done it where you kind of daydream, or you've meditated deeply about an issue, and all of a sudden you come up with a solution you didn't have before. Some people would say, oh, you just tapped more into the unconscious recesses of your mind. Some people would say, hey, there's higher levels of reality, and maybe you're tapping into those somehow. Some of the work I've done before is with a coach, and she does conditioning and meditation, where she can allow you to begin to get what's called your adepts, or these are your guides, your spirit guides, if you will. And you have two, supposedly, that I have seen, I have talked with, I have gotten information from them, fairly accurate information. Would I call it psychic? Not so much, because it's not me doing it. It's just me listening to what they have to say and going, okay, do I accept this or not, and then act on it. So I do believe that there is this reality that's out there, and he may just have a high capacity to tap into it. And it sounds like he might. It could very well just be an excuse that he's using, and this is his own made-up reality, Either way, it doesn't change too much, in the sense that he is checking out from what he's having to handle on this earth plane.
Absolutely.
So whether the alternate realities actually exist or don't, and that's, a matter of opinion. I don't, somewhat we can prove that they do, but that's still, speculative science, pseudoscience at this point. I'm not a huge fan of science telling us everything because I don't think it can quantify everything.
Sure.
But you have this guy that truly is not handling earth plane shit, and he's checking out into whether it's a daydream or astral plane or causal plane or the Akashic record or wherever he's finding this spirits. And that's the thing you have to realize too. If you are taking it from that level, he needs to begin to identify who these spirits, these entities are. Are they positive or negative? And the way you can find that out is one, you can ask him. Two, you can begin to glean what are their messages really thematically telling people, If they're telling you to kill everybody and murder everybody, probably not such positive entities. If they're telling you, hey, you need to save the world and, raise your level of consciousness. Maybe they are more positive.
Yeah.
One technique that I've seen people do is, and this might be a really good use for you. This was for a guy with multiple personalities. So he's having a bunch of entities talking to him at all given times. And obviously the doctors are going, hey, it's all in your head. It's just chemicals that are not working right.
Yeah.
And you're creating this reality.
Giving him all kinds of diagnoses, and what was schizophrenia at 15, and so he's had multiple diagnoses.
Right. Which in my opinion, diagnoses are kind of more just basic patternings, and most of the time they don't do it well.
Well, that's the thing. You can call it cheesecake. You can call it whatever it is.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, is to treat the symptoms and to understand the symptoms.
And at a certain level, manage the root cause, which at some level is this lacking of dealing with your earth plane stuff. And,
yes.
And not just the fact that you need to cut out this alternative reality or this higher level of consciousness, because that's very important too. That's where you can get information to bring to the earth plane. This is very akin to what the East versus the West. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this stuff, but it's a lot of the work of Joseph Campbell. But he always says, hey, listen, if you're a Westerner, you should only do Western esoteric practices. If you're Eastern, you should only do Eastern. And then you have a lot of these people that are blending the two together. What happens is, in the East, you go to the top of the mountain, peaks of consciousness. So this would be like what this guy's doing. He's literally going to higher levels of consciousness, gleaning information. It's for his own use, whatever. But the Western style would be, that's fine, get that information, but now we got to do some shit with it, How do we bring that information back down to the earth plane and heal humanity so that more people can go up there, so our natural state just begins to elevate versus one person sitting on top of a mountain? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand.
So this in a sense, you can be, I think one option is to encourage him to figure out how to bring this mountaintop experiences to reality. How does he take this information that he's getting these, because hopefully it's telling him something besides just kill yourself when the phoenix rises, right? I don't know. It might be worth exploring what is it that they're telling him. What nuggets of truth is he gleaning from these encounters? And even if it's just aspects of his unconscious, hopefully he's getting some tangible information. The other thing that you can do is, after you've explored those, see how to, maybe he needs some help figuring out how would you take that sort of an information and make it useful on the earth plane. It doesn't sound like he's very well developed in that side, the adult ego. So he needs to have, if you need to save humanity and that's the message you're getting, how do we do it? Let's explore this. What would it look like? If you had the answer, what would it be? How would you make this happen? And then the other thing I've seen happen, and this was more for the multiple personalities, like the significant voices and stuff like that, is call a board meeting. And what you do is you get them into a somewhat semi-meditative state. If they can get to that state or whatever, if they're hearing multiple voices, is bring them all together and have a board meeting and tell him that he's in charge. And have him, envision himself at a round table, if you will, where he has a gavel and he can control the conversation. He gets to ask the different personalities or the different voices to speak, but they are on his command, if you will. And then begin to see, it's a lucid sort of meditative dreaming state where he may be going to these alternate realities, but he's somewhat cognizant enough to communicate back with you and bring the message back to you.
At the same time, yeah.
At the same time. And what we use is a hypnotic conditioning, basically, to do that. I've seen it done many, many times. It works very effectively. If you're not trained in it, it's not super easy, but it's basically just hypnotic conditioning. I don't know if you've looked into that or not.
Oh, I don't do much of that, no.
Okay. So
But
Emil
I
Cote,
know quite a bit about it, and
right? And
I've
if anything, he could do it on
got
Skype, and I could do it with you. If we got him on Skype, you could sit in the room with him, and I could guide him through it, and then he could begin to discuss it if he's open to that. That's an idea. The other thing is just let him go to his place where he normally goes and say, hey, I want to go along for the ride. You go, start telling me what you see. Bring it back to me. This may be challenging for him, but it may be something he really enjoys doing with you, because probably more than anything, we want connection. And, in that world, he's disconnected and connected. So this might be an opportunity for him to connect on a level with you that no one else is asked to be included in.
yeah.
Because almost everybody just wants love. They want connection. They want understanding. They want to be validated. Those sorts of things will help the craziest of crazy all the way to just the sanest of sane. So that may be an opportunity just to connect and build more rapport. You may glean information. It's curious because, so much of his stuff is conflicting messages, right? Like, oh, okay, I'm going to this plane, but they want me to kill myself, but just not yet. And that sounds a whole lot more like that's his conscious mind regulating that message at some level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know it does.
So what are your thoughts on it as far as, like, how do you approach the metaphysical side? Have you studied any of that, adepts and alternate realities and stuff?
Yeah, I've studied it in my personal capacity, not in terms of my official studying and my degrees and things like that. I've gone into it on my own, and I certainly believe. There's an existential crisis that he's facing as well. So, he lost his job as well at the same time because he wasn't coping, and then this doctor committed suicide. In terms of the metaphysical, I use sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I always try to bring them back to reality and use different approaches, whether it's CBT, whether it's person-centered, client-centered approach, whether it's motivational interviewing, and things like that. So I try to steer most of those type of clients away from the metaphysical realm. Although I don't discourage or how can I say, I motivate them, whatever their belief may be. I motivate that, unless it's causing or affecting their quality of life. Yeah. That's what it boils down to at the end of the day. And this is affecting his quality of life because he's not taking responsibility for certain things. He's isolating. He's being very avoidant. That's where I am at the moment with him.
Yeah, and that's common. I think the biggest thing that most people deal with is that they don't take self-responsibility. They're abdicating their responsibility on almost every level. Oh, I don't even know what to eat. I'm just going to go to the grocery, and I'm sure the food manufacturers are going to take care of me, and I'm sure the government of EPA is going to take care of the environment. I'm sure the police are going to take care of my safety, and I'm sure, just complete abdication of responsibility. So in healthy individuals all the way to the most pathological, I think we're seeing this as a major problem. Are you abdicating responsibility? Then second to that is, can he function? Is he doing his basic stuff? Is he getting dressed? Is he going out? Is he engaging with people? If he's not doing that, he's not regulating those sides of himself. We all have a spiritual side. We all have a physical side. this earth plane stuff, and we have to be able to operate on the earth plane and interact and engage with spirit. The problem with that is if we get tipped any which way, we become imbalanced in the chakra system. Are you familiar with the chakra system?
Yeah.
So oftentimes you'll start seeing that they become very imbalanced in the chakras, and this can start affecting organ health and general health and all kinds of issues. So not at all necessarily a good thing to become imbalanced. You want to be very grounded before you go into spirit, and that's one thing that I would encourage him to work on, is becoming more grounded so that he can utilize and you may present it in a way. I want you to be able to capitalize on this spiritual information. I want you to be able to utilize the spiritual information. It's useless to anyone if you're not grounded. And there's lots of ways to ground them energetically and then also ground them mentally. It sounds like you're doing a lot of the mental stuff, like CBT and person-centered and all that stuff. That gets them kind of this mental cognitive grounding.
Yeah.
They can also do things that are more subtle, like wearing the color red or going and standing outside with bare feet, being outside in nature, touching rocks and stones. Those sorts of things can ground that energy a little bit.
Okay.
He might even, it sounds a little out there, but you can also have them, carry certain stones that are first chakra stones. And then do any kind of yoga activities or qigong activities that would stimulate that first and second chakra a little bit.
Okay.
And begin to root them and ground them and bring them out of those higher chakras down at more of a neutral level. Because
I've had clients before where I've told them to get a fear stone or a fear pebble.
Yeah, there you go.
Something like that. And I've asked him to do that, to find something wherever he wants. He can get it from wherever he wants to, and just focus all that fear and that he's feeling at the time into his hand or into that stone, and that seems to have worked quite well with him.
And that's a good thing, because stones are earth. They will bring you back down. They'll ground again a little bit.
Yeah.
Some are stronger than others, mind you. But yeah, that's a good call. Lots of barefoot grounding in the earth. So have you heard of the term earthing or grounding?
I've heard the term.
Okay, so basically what it is the body can absorb negative ionization through the bottoms of the feet. Barefoot in the grass, in the dirt, really helps stimulate that negative ionization, which actually is affects the person at a cellular environment.
Yeah.
Very stimulating for their nervous system, but it's very grounding. It's especially powerful after rainstorms, to be barefoot outside with that. First thing in the morning with the dew, stuff like that, that really, with the water and the earth, it really does tend to calm and ground people. So maybe a 10-minute walk outside barefoot or something like that, or just standing outside for 10 minutes. I don't know if he would be open to that, but that could definitely be, I would say that could definitely be a helpful thing. And he can rub his stone during that time. He can sit on a log and put his feet in the ground and just sit there. He can actually walk around barefoot. That doesn't have to move. Just being outside barefoot will on earth. It can't just be like standing on a patio.
Yeah, and walking in the beach, on the sand.
Exactly. That would be a really quality place to go, That would be fantastic, depending on how close you are to the beach. So all those things would be very helpful to get him back grounded, and it will help him have something that's worthwhile. It will reconnect him back to the natural state. I think one of the biggest things we're seeing now is in addition to this, is people are becoming more and more technology driven, more and more media driven, more and more television driven, and they're losing touch with true reality anyways. I mean, look how many dumbasses watch the Kardashians and shit like that, It's like, it's this, we want to live a fantasy life when real life is outside the window passing us by.
Becoming more and more deistic.
Yeah.
In a sense, and they don't believe in ascribing agency to some sort of higher power, call it God.
Yeah.
And it's more of a personal choice as opposed to an intervening God or an intervening power. I know in America, a lot of people are go to church. Religion is well. I saw some statistic that 60% think that Jesus will be coming back in the next 50 years.
Yeah,
something like that. But I think a lot of people go to church, and it's sort of off the topic, are more for a sense of community than actual believing in what the scriptures say. And I think getting back to him, he did mention that he's more of he's not an atheist, but he's a deist, where he believes in an observing God as opposed to an intervening one. So he has that, and I mean, I don't discourage it, I've got my own personal views. I don't know what your views are.
I mean, I definitely believe that there is a God. I think that we use that term very loosely and with not much understanding. It's trying to describe this huge thing, and what I feel is that most religions try to encapsulate aspects of God, and then they say, look, we've got it, and it's a reflection at some level. It's like, for example, I've heard this likened to psychology, and I liken it to religion as well, but it's like the shattered mirror. A mirror reflects perfectly back to you. You shatter it, and you take a piece of it, and it will reflect the entirety of yourself back to you, but it's one piece of the entire mirror. And all of these religions have taken this one piece and claimed they've encapsulated this one piece as the totality, when it's just an aspect of the mirror.
Yeah.
And they're missing some of the other aspects. I always say I'm definitely not atheist, but I'm not into religion at all. I'm into truth. And in my opinion, God is truth with a capital T, but it's so big and so broad. It's fairly mind-blowing, and I don't think most people could really conceptualize it fully. I think some of us can get closer to it than others, but I don't even think that we have this capacity to do that, to take this huge, broad, abstract concept and go, oh, look, it's just a little dude in the sky, and there's a little devil with a pitchfork.
Well, as Freud put it, the need, the fear of death is what got people to create the Sky Father, or the Sky, was it the Sky Parent, Sky Father or Sky Parent? Yeah,
exactly. And you'll find that people that had a poor quality relationship with their father oftentimes will have Big Daddy in the Sky religious experiences. They'll become Christian.
But with a punishing.
Lots of punishment, lots of Big Daddy in the Sky. Those that had really poor mother issues oftentimes will come to these earth goddesses. They'll see, they'll start, worshiping Mother Earth and become hippies and shit like that. They'll be a little more granola, and if you start talking to them, you'll find that their relationship with their mother was probably a little less grand, and maybe their relationship with their dad was good, but their mom maybe was not so great. So they, and it can come more in even a non-religious aspect, I think, in this, we're connected to Mother Earth, we're going to recycle, we're going to save the earth, we're going to become good hippies, So I think with anything, you can when you have an imbalance, you can take something positive like saving the earth or recycling and make it pathological to some level.
Yeah. The thing is, as in my experience, it's worked. I mean, the placebo effect. You create an imaginary friend very easily, and in times of adversity, think that you're being heard, think that you're being listened to, think that you're receiving answers. And the placebo effect can be very powerful, and I can see how it can work, but it doesn't make it true.
Correct.
that's my view on that. And whether people want to believe in whatever they believe in is up to them. And even if I have patients who are religiously bent, obviously I would never. You don't get involved in a philosophical or debate about that. But just my personal views are that more along the lines of sort of a Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens view. I don't know if you know Christopher Hitchens, yeah. Sam Harris. Sam, a neuroscientist in America, who believes fully in the transcendent, the spiritual realm, but as far as an intervening power who's got you in mind at every given moment is solipsism, or it's a bit arrogant to believe that your prayers are being heard and are going to be answered above somebody else's, or the millions of people who are starving and praying for a plate of food.
Right. No, I fully on board with that. I agree. Unless it's it's like let my sports team beat the other person's sports team. Let's see.
Well, that's the thing. Absolutely. Often we watch cricket here. Cricket's a big thing in South Africa, and overseas in India or Pakistan, you see two sides and they're both praying. And so I don't believe in a God that decides who's going to win a war, who's going to win a cricket match. But as an individual, I can see how it can make you feel not alone, or feel that you're being listened to, or that you may receive answers from. But and that's okay. That's okay with me. It's when it becomes, when children are taught that they'll be going to hell for certain things,
Yeah, that's problematic.
The elderly are taken advantage of, then it becomes an issue for me. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I'm fully in agreement with that. I think a lot of the people that are very devout are very easily manipulated. They are being manipulated. They are being scammed. They are being mind controlled, if you will.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid, and fear shuts down the IQ. It starts rewiring the brain. Starts cascading hormones.
Just say that again, Scott. When
fear enters the brain, it starts shutting down the IQ.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it brings you back into this very reptilian limbic system. And unfortunately, that reptilian system can't differentiate between the fear of being chased by a lion and the fear of going to hell, or the fear that there's a terrorist right around the corner that's going to blow you up. It starts rewiring the brain, and it starts sending cascades of hormones that would be a negative hormone cascade. That's more fear-driven, and it keeps someone in this constant state of fear. So, in my opinion, what we're dealing with is...
So I would call that the prime drive, where you get the ethical drive and the prime drive.
Exactly. And
Space,
all of our media...
Prime drive, yeah.
Exactly. So all of our media, all of the religions are tapping into this. Our education system is tapping into this. Fear. If you don't go to university, you're not going to get a good job. You're going to die in a gutter. So go into debt for it. You're going to hell. There's a terrorist around every corner. The media is perpetuating this. The government's setting this up. It's a lot of people pushing this agenda of fear, because if you're always in a constant state of fear and you're never getting a chance for it to normalize, you will never...
And then you're not intuitive. You don't make good decisions. You're impulsive. You're vulnerable.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Exactly. And so most of the people that we are dealing with nowadays, and even people that are what I would consider even healthy people, are under this sort of stress because it's very hard to get yourself out of it. this is where I use so much nutrition and psychoeducation and spiritual education. Is that okay? What's really going on? Some of my posts I get accused of leaning towards this conspiracy model, but it is in a sense a conspiracy. But it's so fucking obvious that it's not a conspiracy. You're just not wanting it to be real. People that think the media is there to actually inform them about stuff doesn't understand that it's telling them how to think about everything. It's framing the world for them. And in this ability to frame the world, it has all control over you because you've allowed it, not because it truly is anything super powerful. It's just a talking box. But people listen to the telly and they're on the news media 24 hours a day. I mean, I know some people that fucking sleep with that shit on. And I'm like, well, no wonder you're stressed out. I'm stressed out hearing about it. So you're dealing with a lot of that on a continuous basis on every single person. And I try to take that into account because as much as they come in with a little problem about their husband or their wife or this guy, he lost his buddy or this doctor that he had rapport with and he cares about, and that was a significant relationship. That's important, and that's fundamental probably to his case. But he also has these deep underlying things that are being perpetuated all the time. So I'm careful to try to get people off of the news consumption, off of this thing, unless they understand how mind control works and how they're being manipulated. I don't want them in those things. When they go through like mental emotional courses and we do some of these mind training things, they can then begin to consume some of this information at a little bit. I always say a little bit at a time. You don't want to just be inundating yourself with this, and that's really important. I actually wrote a book too on meditation, and I'll email it to you. I have a PDF form of it. It was for the SMU Center for Family Counseling, which is one of the universities here in Dallas. They have it. They utilize it in their clinic, but I don't think anybody knows how to use it. So it's definitely underutilized in that community. It's very base level meditative techniques and the understanding behind the meditative techniques. Because I felt like if you understand what it is you're trying to regulate, the thinking patterns and stuff that you're trying to regulate, that you will have a more impressive use of the meditation, and you'll understand what you're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
I'll send that to you.
More insight. Yes.
Right. So that may be a helpful tool. This first aspect is all about thinking patterns and how dualistic thinking patterns are problematic. And
what is your view on addiction? Because when I started out with counselling, I was dealing a lot with addicts and alcoholics. What is your view on addiction?
Mine's evolved to some extent. I do believe in the neurocapacity of addiction, meaning that I don't think everybody that's experiencing drug and alcohol use is an addict. When it has rewired the brain, and that hindbrain is, instead of safety, sustenance, and sex, it's got alcohol trumping that, or drugs trumping that, then you definitely have a what I call a true addict. If it hasn't attained that point, I think that they may not be considered a true addict. Like, there's a lot of people that go and binge on a Friday night. They would be addictive behaviors. They're using that to cope, but they are not truly rewired the brain. They can function and keep those reptilian primal instincts in play. It's always a coping mechanism, and it's always to fill a void.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I asked you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a spiritual. I know that there are lots of different models, and the 12-step approach claims a bigger or a greater success than it actually has. But there's definitely a spiritual element to addiction.
Absolutely.
And over the years, I mean, I've from being quite a purist, a 12-step purist, I've realized for how many people that doesn't work, and perhaps maybe the matrix model or a combination of integrative therapies works for them. But ultimately, there's a spiritual void, and that's where the key for me is when it comes to addiction.
And I think there's also not just a spiritual void, but an emotional void. And some pain, some implicit pain that we may not know from childhood. I feel like a lot of our trauma comes from these childhood wounds as well. And alcohol is great because it numbs you out. You don't think about that shit.
It's a great lubricant. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, you have that, but all addictions are at the root of filling some void, whether it's an emotional, a spiritual, a psychological void. It's filling a void, and it may be filling a void at all of those levels, which makes it even more complicated. But you think about this, buying something. My buddy Jason Christoff, he does great posts. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he does stuff like even shopping. Like, what are you trying to buy back? When you go and buy a Ferrari or a handbag or a watch or whatever it is, what is it? Are you trying to buy power, masculinity, toughness? You're trying to buy back something you think you're missing. And the fact that you can identify that you need something like, say, a Ferrari to get that means that you have that capacity within you. You just have to learn how to develop it without necessarily needing to go buy the Ferrari or the watch or the new suit or whatever it is, because that can become equally addictive. And this is where I think the 12-step model breaks down significantly. And it's for, I hate to say this, I'm going to put this on, I'm going to say this out loud, but I think the 12-step model is for stupid people. Ones that aren't really thought-provoking.
Well, the thing is it's different. It works for such a small minority of people.
Right.
And the thing is, it feeds into the addictive behavior in terms of it's ritualistic. It's ritualistic. Going to meetings, sharing, meeting with people with the same mindset. So on that level, it can be helpful.
Yeah.
But on many other levels, it can be quite unhelpful.
Well, it doesn't.
And I wouldn't have said this. I wouldn't have said this 8 years ago or nine years ago. And for some people, it could be quite damaging. Expect being asked to share in a room when you've got social phobia and you've been told by your counselor, I want you to go and be the first person to share or the last person to share in the meeting. And even some people being told to go off their medication by unqualified people. The 12 steps. Yeah, I mean, you've got your diehards, and there's a lot of the old timers who swear by it. But spontaneous remission spontaneous remission is, in terms of people getting better, claims as much of a success rate as the 12-step program.
Well, and you got to think about it. The 12-step program is not addressing the root issue of the addiction. It's just nipping the symptomatic behavior. So if it's drinking, you're going to not drink. If it's gambling, you're going to not gamble. If it's drugs, you're going to not drug. But what do? They pump them full of coffee. They let them smoke cigarettes. They may go.
But it's also fear-driven in the sense that it's not a religion, but it's fear-driven in the sense that if you relapse, this is going to happen. If you relapse, that's going to happen. Relapse.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of fear is instilled in someone as well, and that causes a lot of people not to come back.
Shame and fear is such a low vibrational rate that they're like, oh man, I messed up. Well, yeah, we all mess up. Fuck it. It's one day. Just don't drink the next day. Shit,
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
just stop again. Like, I mean, it's, we hold, we hold a lot of conditions over ourselves, and I think that's problematic for a lot of reasons because it if someone makes a mistake, they can't just go, well, shit, all right, time to do it again. Have you ever done Qigong?
No, but I've heard of it.
Okay, so Qigong is this great meditative thing. It's basically a form of energy work that was from China. So it's very similar to yoga in a lot of senses. It's just not so stretchy. It's more flowing motion. Tai Chi is one of the aspects of Qigong, but there's other aspects, which is the seated, the walking, and the Tai Chi ruler. And so Tai Chi ruler is this ruler that you move in circles and you breathe and you meter your breath and your thoughts, and you begin to meditate and rock, and you do it outside so you're grounded and everything. And your goal is to do a gong. This is why it's called Qi, which is life energy, and Gong, which means literally 100 days of practice. So that's how the Qigong got its name. And in our sticks that we use, our Tai Chi rulers, I would put a hash mark for every day that you complete it, and then when you get 100, you've completed a gong. And then you start again, and you can complete multiple gongs in a row. You could go 300 days, and you would have completed 3 gongs. But I tell you what, the first time, and I've seen this many, many times with clients, and this is an interesting psychological principle, is it's pretty hard to do it for the 15 minutes each day without ever missing a day in the 24-hour period, without missing a 15-minute session. So for 100 days straight, no breaks, you have to hit 15 minutes a day with this Tai Chi ruler. And you will get to about day 40 and miss a day. And if you do, you got to start over at 1 again. Right? So it has to be a continuous 100-day practice. And many people get very angry. They'll get up to 40, they'll get up to 78, and they miss a day, and they have to start over from 1. So it's very challenging. So if you can complete...
How do you know when you've completed one, though?
How do you know?
15 minutes. How do you know when you've completed one?
A gong?
Well, no. Well, the gong is when it's 100.
100 of them, so 15 minutes.
How do you know when you've completed those 15 minutes?
You stand outside, you put a timer on for 15 minutes. I use like a little egg timer, put it on like 17 minutes so I can get a chance to calm down. And then I do my practice for 15 minutes. You just breathe and move the ruler, and it's a rocking meditative pattern. It's very reminiscent of being rocked as a child in the womb, you know? So you get this 15 minutes of practice in daily, and as long as you're keeping track of yourself on your ruler, as long as you get it in for the day, then you're there, you know? So I failed 3 or 4 times, and it was so effing frustrating, but I finally got 100, and I tell you what, the experience, what a lot of people do is they would see that as 4 failures, but what it was 4 practice runs. And it wasn't like you were not getting, doing it for 75 days and then missing it and then having to do it again for 100 days just means you got 175 days in, you know? And you can focus on that break, which, a lot of people, when they break their sobriety, focus on that, I relapsed, it's a problem, and it's this terrible thing. But I learned, you got so much more out of it, and
well, that's the thing. You might have lost clean time, but you haven't lost what you've gained.
Exactly. And so it was a very interesting experience to have to do that, because it made me put me in touch with what is the practice? What are you doing? I mean, is it just to get 100 days? Or are you really trying to meditate and connect? And so these perceived failures are simply a chance to connect and meditate and get in touch with parts of yourself that you didn't realize you had. And they're not failures, just like any of these, not drinking forever or whatever it is, when they relapse, it's like some horrific thing where it's like, hey, it's a lesson. You poke yourself a little bit, you realize, hey, maybe I don't really want to drink. I don't feel so great. I got a hangover. Little poke tells you, hey, all right,
sure,
it's time to get back on the wagon and do this. And invariably, every single client that does this 100-day gong, it takes them multiple times to complete it. They screwed up at least 3 or 4 times, if not more. But they all are very focused on messing up. And when you can change their mindset into it's not messing up, it's just rebuilding your practice at a deeper level, they truly do begin to change their mindset when they finally complete that 100 days. And that's an interesting psychological process to watch in someone else. When it's frustrating when it's in yourself, but when it's someone else and you're getting to see it, and you've already been there.
No, but it's very interesting. I mean, the level that you operate on, deeply spiritual, deeply you're metaphysical as well. And I think that's where a lot of people, and I suppose a lot of therapists, and me included, don't use enough of that in a client's process.
And every client.
I mean, I had a guy the other day who's a hairstylist who has developed obsessive compulsive disorder traits to the point where his quality of life is affected and his work is being affected. And but the unbelievable thing is that he worked in Thailand for I think for a year as a hairstylist, and he had no anxiety, he had no fear, and as soon as he came back to Cape Town, South Africa, and Cape Town is very modern. There's a very large Jewish sector here, and there's a lot of rich and famous. As soon as he found a job in which we call Camps Bay, which is a very wealthy area, all the self-referencing started, where he started to reference himself against everybody else. I don't have this, or he's got a bigger car, or they've got a bigger family, or they've got more. And it was amazing for him. I said to him, it was profound that all of these anxieties started once he came back to this competitive society, and the self-referencing and the obsessions started.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
That's rather fascinating. I mean, I think that's what they want. I mean, I think that comparison keeps you an avid consumer of whatever it is. More cars, more children, more slave, whatever it is, just popping them out. That's very interesting. So,
and the thing is, I asked him. I said, "But do your clients validate you?" He says, "Yeah, they told me I've done a wonderful job." And I said, what's the problem? As opposed to overseas when you got validated.
Yeah.
And then it came out that he's deeply insecure. He's deeply worried about what everybody thinks. The inability or the failure within himself, that he hasn't succeeded. He hasn't performed. And this all only came out once he was living on this level.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was never an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely fascinating. I think that, I wonder, did you ever ask him if he felt superior to the people in Thailand? Like if
funny enough, I never asked him that. I mean, it's a client. It's quite a new client. I've only seen him 2 or 3 times.
Okay, I would be just curious.
That's curious to know that.
It's
it
like
doesn't strike me that the type of personality that would feel like that.
And it may be very subtle. I mean, it's like, I'm educated. I'm not primitive or what. Who knows?
Yep.
I don't know where in Thailand he was located. You know what I mean? So some of them are very, still very less modernized. So sometimes that subconscious drive can still be there. It's he's still doing it. It's just he's on top of it this time instead of being under it.
Well, I explained to him that you're sort of born with a loaded gun, and then you need something to trigger it. And somewhere along the way, these insecurities and this worldview that he has of himself now would have come out. That's what it took for him.
Right.
But very, very, very interesting.
That's very interesting. I was very curious. We could probably talk for hours on cases, but did that help you with the other case that you were dealing with? I want to make sure we got that all nailed down.
Yeah, no, it definitely has helped me a lot. And I'm definitely going to embrace and utilize some of your ideas, because I think it.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, because I think they're going to be very. It makes so much sense to me, and I think it'll be very valuable for him as well.
I hope so. Well, if you need, I'm going to send you that PDF book of mine. It's called Mindfulness in Action, and then obviously we may want to see how he takes to some of those things that we've talked about. If they may work really well, they may really bomb, but I always have more tools in my toolbox, so always let me know and we can.
Yeah, Scott, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely. Hey, man, you too. It's really good to chat with you. We'll have to do it again soon. It was definitely my pleasure. So thanks for
great. And hopefully next time I've got a camera this side so you can see what I look like. Eh?
That'd be great. That'd be great too. So, but no, I appreciate it and everything's great. And I hope you have a good week. Keep me posted on how things go.
Fantastic. I will, and you too.
Sounds good, brother. Be safe.
Thanks, brother.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, buddy. Cheers.
Cheers.